Welcome to the Steve Barkley Ponders Out Loud podcast. As instructional coaches and school leaders, you are tasked with guiding continuous teacher growth to create student success. This podcast looks to support you with strategies from experienced guests, as well as my own insights that I've gathered over the years. I'm thrilled to have you with us. Thanks for tuning in. Redefining Resistance. Joining our podcast today is Becca Silver, the founder of the Whole Educator and the designer of the Resistance Remedy. Becca hosts the Coaching the Whole Educator podcast, where she breaks down the messiness of adult learning and change leadership into practical and doable next steps. I had the privilege of being Becca's guest on her podcast earlier, and I'm really excited to have her join us here. Becca Silver helps school leaders, district leaders, and instructional coaches to do one of the hardest things in education: lead people through resistance, beyond buy-in, and into real commitment. With 2 decades in education, she's worked with thousands of educators and leaders across the U.S. and internationally. Welcome, Becca. I'm just really excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Steve. I love talking to you, and I love how our conversations, like you say, just don't seem to end. And so I'm excited to talk with you on your podcast today.
Well, and the whole topic of looking at resistance and how people look at resistance, define it, address it. I think that's a biggie. So questions about resistance emerge rather quickly when you engage in conversations with coaches, middle-level leaders, and school administrators. Why is that such a pressing topic?
Well, I think, so first of all, there's a big, Peter Block, who's a big voice in the consulting world, right? He has this quote that I use all the time, which is, when we have change, we have to expect resistance. I like to say they're besties. They come together, right? And so one thing we can always expect schools to have is change, right? Schools will always be changing, will always be improving. And yet when change happens, we often get frustrated or surprised by the resistance instead of being proactive and expecting it, right? So one thing is, when change happens, expect resistance will happen. And two, one of the big things that it's so funny because we kind of create this situation. The people we hire, or the people we want to hire, are critical thinkers, right? We interview our teachers, right? We're talking to people, and one of the things we're listening for and looking for as a quality of the teachers we're bringing into our schools is we want them to think critically about what's going on in their classrooms. Who can they differentiate for students? Can they adapt a lesson plan on the fly? And yet, when a change comes down the pipeline that they didn't choose, right, they're expected to comply with it. And some teachers do. They're like, okay, sure. You want me to do this thing now? Not a problem. I'll do it. And some teachers do what I call engage. They engage with the change. And sometimes that grappling, that critical thinking about whether they agree or disagree, or they like or they don't like, or they think they'll be successful with this change, sometimes that looks like resistance.
So we're off already. You just hit I was listening to a podcast on a walk just a day or two ago, and it talked about that the human brain is designed not to want to have to work. Okay? In other words, if I can get what I need without having to do that extra work, that evolution-wise, we're designed that way. And I don't know why, but that just jumped into me as I was listening to you, because change is actually signaling people up front that there's some kind of extra effort, extra work, energy in front of them compared to staying with the status quo.
Yeah. And I think another way that I put it around our brain is formatted to do what's easiest. We always are
Yeah.
looking for the easiest route, but we don't
That's
realize
what
what's
this was said.
easiest for you is different than what's easiest for me. So some teachers, what's easiest for them is to comply. It's like, oh, okay,
Gotcha.
you give me a new direction. It's easier for me to comply than cause some kind of kerfuffle. And some folks, it's easiest for them to resist because there's a harder thing out there for them that they're navigating.
So now you're raising another question for me. Is complying a different form of resistance?
It could be. It could be.
Okay.
It could not be. I think I'm very weary. I could probably do a whole other podcast just on the different forms of compliance.
Yeah.
Some compliance comes from people pleasing. I just want you to be
Uh-huh.
happy with me. Some compliance comes from kind of giving up, right? Like, and that could be a form of resistance.
It's the easy, complying is easier.
Yeah, complying is
Yeah.
just like, fine, I won't win anyway. It's like a form of
Yeah.
resignation. Like, oh, I won't, they, they'll beat me down anyway, or they'll write me up. So fine, I'll just do it. Right. But it depends on where the compliance is coming from, on whether it's resistance or not.
So I pulled this statement from some of your work that I'd like to use as our jump off point. And your statement is resistance isn't refusal. It's a signal of unmet needs.
Yes. Yeah. So underneath all of this is we want to stop making statements about resistance and start asking questions. And so what ends up happening when we're experiencing resistance and us busy coaches and leaders, and we're like, we just need you to do this, please. That's what's best for students, right? We can get real like they should do this, they shouldn't do that. And what we need to be doing instead of making statements about their resistance, we want to start asking questions. And the big question is, what unmet need do they have? Because underneath all of this, all these layers, is the one thing that causes resistance is unmet needs. And we want to be asking, what are those needs that aren't being met?
So talk to us about what some unmet needs might be and how does a person go about diagnosing what the unmet need is?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I've been using the word diagnose a lot in my work the last couple of years. Like, let's diagnose, right? And you and I, before I jump into this, I think you and I were talking about this yesterday. It's when we think about teaching children reading, I'm going to give an analogy. When we think about like Joe needs to read, right? And we say, okay, well, Joe doesn't know how to read. What we don't do is we don't say, just try a reading strategy with him. But we do this with resistance. We say, so-and-so is experiencing resistance. Or we usually say, so-and-so is resistant.
Resistant, yeah.
Right? And then we say, just try a resistance strategy. And it's like, hold on. We would never do that when teaching a child how to read, right? We would diagnose what they need help in and give them the strategy or the tool that would help them get better in that way. We need to do exactly the same with resistance. Instead of saying they're resistant and having some kind of like, try the resistance strategy. It's like, we need to ask, why are they resisting? We're human beings, right? Humans are complex. And so I've created this framework called the Catalyst Mindsets.
I want to stop you before you go into your framework because you used a phrase that I jotted down, and you said is resistant versus experiencing resistance.
Yes.
Hit that for me before you.
Yes. Okay, good. I love talking about this. This is very nuanced language, but I think it's really important for us to distinguish this. When we say this teacher, this person is resistant, or we say resistant teachers, when we label people resistant, we keep them the very thing that we don't want them to be. Instead, my language swap is, this is a person experiencing resistance. We are not, human beings aren't resistant. I'm not resistant. You're not resistant. We experience resistance. We move through it like
we don't want to be resistant.
We just aren't. It's the same as like emotions. It's like,
Okay.
I'm not a happy person. I'm not a sad person. I experience happiness and I experience sadness and I experience resistance.
Good example.
It's something I move through in different areas of my life. Sometimes I experience resistance with a certain person in my life, or a certain area, like learning guitar is my current resistance experience, right? But I'm not a resistant person. I just experience it on and off throughout my life. And we all experience resistance.
Great. So let's talk about what some of those unmet needs are then.
Okay. Yeah. So this framework I've created helps us look at, okay, folks in our schools, they're experiencing resistance. Why are they experiencing resistance? What unmet needs do they have? My framework's called the Catalyst Mindsets. And so we want to ask ourselves essentially 5 questions. And it's looking at people's beliefs, because there's some underlying belief that is keeping folks experiencing resistance, right? A mindset is simply a belief. And that's one thing that I spent my life. I worked with the psychologists and researchers that worked with Carol Dweck with growth mindset. I did growth mindset work with them. So I was very close to the original growth mindset work, right? Not the stuff that ends up on TPT. And so I'm like, look, mindsets are not a bulletin board. They're not working hard. They're not resilience. They can cause those things, right? So mindsets are simply beliefs. So the 5 catalyst mindsets. One is growth mindset. I believe I can improve. Another mindset is success mindset. I believe I can be successful, which is self-efficacy. We love to talk about efficacy because of John Hattie's effect size research, right? Belonging mindset. I believe I belong here. Value mindset. I believe this has value for me, value, purpose, meaning, relevance. And ownership mindset. I believe that by taking responsibility, I can make a difference. And what's cool is within this framework, we can actually say, okay, hold on, they're experiencing resistance. What's having them be stuck or feel stuck? And it could be one or more of those mindsets that's unsupported. And there's also I use very specific language, and I love that you caught that first piece. Another piece of language that I try really hard to stay integrity with is I don't say they're missing a mindset. None of us are missing mindsets. We all have brains, we have neurons, we have neural pathways. We can have unsupported mindsets. So my question is, which of those mindsets are unsupported?
Would you describe a listen for as a coach that signals, let's go back to using diagnose. So I'm guessing it's engaging the teacher in conversation that causes beliefs to emerge.
Yep.
And so am I listening to the beliefs, and the beliefs are helping me identify which of those area mindsets may be the can I say cause of the resistance, or is cause not the right word?
Yep. Okay. Yeah, the cause of the resistance, or finding a root cause. That's exactly it. And so I love that you said listening for, and I think this is one of the most under talked about skills in coaching. We don't just listen, we listen for certain things, right? And so one thing I always recommend is listen to people's complaints. There's gold in people's complaints. Often in coaching, we're like, we're too busy. we got to get through this. We don't have time for complaints, right? Or we try to like glaze over a toxic positivity. Well, it is what it is, right? And it's like, hold on. There's gold in someone's complaints. I have given coaches assignments. I'm like, go back to that teacher and just listen to their complaints, because you'll hear what's important to them in their complaints, right? And so part of that, if someone's experiencing resistance, we can listen to their complaints and sometimes hear what their unmet needs are. Sometimes it's a bit of a smoke signal. I call it like smoke and mirrors. It's like, that's not the thing. There's something underneath it. For example, if I'm listening to someone's complaint and they could be saying something like, I just don't have time for this. I don't have time to do this, plan this new curriculum, right? So it sounds like they have an unmet need around time management. And that may or may not be true. Often it's actually not. That's like one of those smoke and mirrors ones. Yeah. Usually there's something, it's like a secondary complaint. There's usually a primary complaint that's underneath that. Like, why don't you have time? Is it a time management skill issue, or is it you don't find this change relevant? Value mindset, right? So it's like you actually just don't want to spend the time to do it.
There's I often share that when I'm working with a school trying to implement peer coaching, and
Yep.
the teacher's response is, they don't have time to be in another person's classroom.
Hmm.
Uh, and so a question I'll go back with is, what would happen in a coaching situation that you engaged in that would cause you to say that was worth the time?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And that really helps me find out then, but there's certainly values and beliefs come out of that.
Hmm.
Uh, but almost always when time is the resistance,
Hmm.
it's not the real resistance.
That's
I
exactly it.
describe it as a socially acceptable resistance.
Yeah, that's such a great term. It's a socially acceptable resistance. It's exactly it. If I don't have time, it's because then I can sit back and people get really bought into these kinds of complaints. They're like, oh, they're overwhelmed. We need to take things off their plates, right? We go into like scurry mode of we don't want them to burn out, don't give them too much. When in fact, what's underneath all this isn't that there's too much. It's actually that I don't want to say the wrong things, but it's like they don't like the things on their plate.
Yeah. Or let's go back to, would this be the value mindset?
Yeah.
They're not seeing the value
Yeah.
personally for themselves.
Yeah.
And,
That's exactly.
I don't mean that derogatorily. They may not be seeing the value for their students
Yes.
from what it is you're asking them to invest in.
Yes, that's exactly. And I'm going to give you actually a peek into one of my frameworks. So each mindset has its own framework. And so for the value mindset, one of the frameworks is I call it Vuic. It's a nonsense word, and Vuic is the four elements that gives tasks value. It's called task value. The researchers call it task value, and it's the four out. So there's four things. One of four things. One or more of these four things give all tasks value in our lives, right? And so we can start to say, and one thing we need to be real careful about, and I want to say this before I go into Vuic, is our shoulds. The way we bring resistance into conversations is we think they should or shouldn't think or be a certain way or do certain things, right? And usually it has to do with us, like, oh, I wouldn't do it that way, right? So they shouldn't do it that way. And so just because I value something, and sometimes people can get caught into like they should value that same thing, and it's like, hold on, let's actually step back to what I think they should be doing and actually look at what they actually are valuing, not what I think they should value. So I want to say that, right? The four elements, Vuic, is values aligned, which is something could have value for me if it aligns with my identity. This is who I am. So I do things because it aligns with who I am. The U is usefulness, and this is probably the most common one. Does this task, is it useful to me in some way, including solving a problem? So does it, if I implement this reading program, will it help me with behavior management? They're not necessarily, they're certainly not the same thing, but if I have a problem with behavior management, right, and that's my main focus, will this other thing you're asking me to do help me solve that? I is interesting, and this is pure interest. I think this is enjoyable and fun. That could give a task value, right? And then part of task value, when we're weighing whether something's valuable for us, is also the C is cost. We're weighing, what does this cost me? Right? And so for me, like playing guitar is a great example for me. I think it is interesting and fun, and yet the cost is time. I have a time cost issue. I'm like, oh, well, if I play guitar, then I won't be able to do this other thing, right? And so I'm weighing time cost.
It's a triggering a strategy that I've tried to lay it out as a picture for coaches to have in their mind when they're working through that. But I talk about a balance scale.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have benefits on one side and cost on the other side,
Yep.
if you're asking the person to make a change,
Yep.
you've got to get the balance scale to tip.
Mm-hmm.
So the payoff side has to outweigh the cost side.
Yep. That's exactly
So
it.
if you look at it science wise, you got two options there.
Yeah.
One is you can increase what the payoffs are. So
Yeah.
you've got a nice list of payoffs there,
For
or
sure.
decrease the cost,
That's exactly it.
or
And
both.
learning what a payoff and a cost for that person is.
Bingo.
Right.
That's
And some people are fueled by praise. Some people are like, you praise me, I'll do whatever you want. I am not fueled by praise. I'm not that right? So that wouldn't really motivate me a lot, but there's a lot of people that are, right? So figuring out what is a payoff for that other person. And I just want to, I think one of the biggest things that keeps us from understanding other people is our shoulds, because we project on other people. I'm repeating myself because I see this so often in schools, that we get caught up in our own heads as leaders and start to imagine that the person in front of us thinks the same way we do.
trying to put a couple pieces that are coming at me here. I am big on questioning and listening.
Yes.
Okay, for coaching, so
Yeah.
that the critical skill sets for coaches,
Mm-hmm.
listening, or questioning and listening, and having the listening drive your questions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep. Yes.
and and I think I'm realizing as I'm listening to you
Mm-hmm.
that a critical part of that is teacher beliefs and values,
Yeah.
which I now might broaden my definition of to your to your list of mindsets.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to be effective as a coach in getting the teacher to reflect on whatever change it is we're doing, the more I know about the teacher's thinking in each of those mindsets,
Mm-hmm.
the better. So
Yes.
it's really given coaches a great set of listening force, is what I'm hearing.
Oh my gosh, yes. You're the first person to put this together. Thank you. Yes. This is exactly it. And I use it all the time in my own. I ask myself these questions. I listen for even myself. Why am I resisting that? I've had coaches learn this framework, and they're like, my relationship with my teenager got better because they're listening for what is an unsupported mindset here. That's exactly it. Because it can be overwhelming to say, okay, why are they doing this? What's the root cause of this, right? Or even just like, what's important to them? But if I can listen for 5 basic things, I have somewhere to start.
Yeah. So what do coaching leaders need to believe about themselves in order to support the mindsets of their clients?
Leaders need to first, I think, the fundamental belief that I have a lot of analogies with resistance, but one that resistance is a compass and not a dead end. I think one, we need to view resistance as that, and two, as leaders, that we can have the tools to figure out what is causing the resistance, and to believe that we can help them make a total turnaround. Like this, we can actually have a breakthrough. And I think there's a belief in there that it's going beyond what we have previously seen happen in schools, if that makes sense. Sometimes within our schools, we have these contexts. Oh, I'm gonna go real broad right now. We have the way we do school has certain contexts. I actually call them, I never share about these on podcasts. I call them the silent progress killers. And they're kind of I nickname them the kryptonite. There's a kryptonite on the way that we do school that actually actively works against each of these mindsets. So for ownership mindsets, silent progress killer in schools is our compliance culture. Mm-hmm. The way we do school, the way we do school, the superintendent buys a curriculum and then tells everyone to do it and then holds everyone accountable. Look at the usage rates, right? That is compliance culture. And yet we are trying to develop teacher ownership. And so I think one believe this is, I know I'm zooming out real big, but we need to understand and start looking at sometimes the way we have assumed that we have to do school actively works against us developing these and supporting these mindsets in our teachers. So really a willingness to zoom out and say, how am I supporting and inadvertently, accidentally unsupporting these mindsets?
Your mindsets have, your mindsets should, oh, there comes the should. What's just hit me, it's the core of what a teacher wants to make happen with his or her learners.
Yes, that's exactly it. They can go, every human where my growth mindset has gone, catalyst mindsets can go. That's exactly it.
Because with the time pressure curriculum on teachers,
yep,
the tendency is to run over resistance.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Not to see resistance from kids,
yeah,
as they're not seeing the value, or they're not believing they can succeed, and that's what I need to be addressing.
Mm-hmm. We try to compliance our way out of resistance.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely not. It is trying to put, I like to say it's like putting icing on a mud pie. We're like trying to just make it, force it to happen. And this is where we see repeat behaviors for students. Like, why do they keep doing that every week? Teachers, why do they keep returning back to their old ways? Because we're trying to compliance our way out of resistance. It is rare, and I've been doing this work for many, many years, over 8 years. When I'm in schools, it is rare that pure accountability is actually the thing that's needed. Rare. Probably I could say maybe a handful of times in all of the years and the thousands of people I've worked with across the US that it's pure accountability that needed to happen. Usually it's one of those 5 mindsets.
So one last thought from me that's running in my head, and then I'll open the floor for anything you think we've missed that you want to lay out here. But I'm thinking that a common coaching problem is the coach responding with resistance to resistance.
Oh, that's exactly it. Yes. Thank you. That's exactly it. Right. So us as coaches and leaders, right, we enter a conversation and we can also bring resistance, right? And usually, and I'm going to bring this up one more time, it's in the form of shoulds. And I like to say we're shoulding everywhere and making a mess, right? It's a shouldy, stinky mess. And I should on other people. You should or shouldn't be doing that. And I should on myself. I should or shouldn't be doing that. That can look like perfectionism sometimes. And we want to be careful that when we are entering into coaching conversations and relationships, that we self-check and we make sure that we're not bringing the resistance, because what we resist persists. So when we show up in conversations, we are.
So if I'm hearing resistance from a teacher and it raises my resistance, it's going to bring persistence in the teacher's resistance back on me. Love the word.
That's exactly it. And I want to, my recommendation for folks are like, oh no, I think I do that. I think I should on them when I'm they're doing things that I don't think they should be doing that. Right. The nuance of that, of the shoulds, I have my expectation continuum, which I share in the resistance remedy, is we want to shift from shoulds, which is having an expectation and there's a value judgment there. I think it's good or bad that you're doing that. Yep. We want to shift to support. And we want to, so that's the same expectation, but now I'm bringing curiosity. How could I support them in meeting that expectation? And that's where we can ask those 5 catalyst mindsets. What do they need support in?
So open floor. Anything about this topic that you didn't get a chance to put out there in our conversation so far that you want to use as a wrap up?
I think one thing I just want to hammer home around listening. Listening is one of the most powerful tools to diagnose why resistance is happening. And the quality of listening is super important, because we can be bad listeners, right? Just because I'm quiet does not mean I'm a good listener and all. And our neurologically, people can sense whether I'm actually listening. And it tends to be a subconscious thing, right? So one, when I'm listening, I make sure that I have put aside my shoulds. And two, when I am listening for to try to help them peel back the layers, I use a lot of reflective listening. And I'm sure a lot of folks listening to this podcast probably know some, it's saying, what I heard you say was, it sounds like you're feeling, it seems like, it's happening this way for you, right? Repeating back, not parroting, right? But repeating back what someone is saying helps them peel back the layers to get to the root cause so we can get beyond, I just don't have time for this, right? And so I really want to recommend, as folks are listening, to reflectively listen to help to get down, because the most powerful pieces, when we get down to that root cause, powerful. I mean, I've had teachers go from, I'm not doing anything you're saying, to showing up to my office, to other coaches' offices, saying, what should I do next? Right. And it can happen within 24 hours when we actually address the actual root cause.
Well, thank you so much. I was looking forward to this. I knew it would be great, and it's been that way. What's the best way for listeners to follow up with you with questions or check out the resources that you have available?
Yeah. So my website's thewholeeducator.com. And I have, if you want to check out the resistance remedy, it's $370, which tends to be like, you don't need approval from a principal. If you want a cheap resource that explains all of the nuances around all of these mindsets, it is there in my website. You can listen to my podcast, Coaching the Whole Educator. And if you want to just email me, feel free to do that, Becca@thewholeeducator.com.
So if we put the link to your website into the podcast lead-in, it'll be easy for folks to find you and follow up.
For sure.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening, folks. I'd love to hear what you're pondering. You can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn at Steve Barkley, or send me your questions and find my videos and blogs at barkleypd.com.